Joining us now is Dr. Christine Cauffield. She is the CEO of LSF Health Systems. The Zero Suicide Summit is coming to St. Johns County this year, and we'll talk about that. But I do want to talk with you, Dr. Cauffield, about the fact TikTok right now coming under pressure for not quickly removing a live stream of influencer Perez Hilton apparently cutting himself with a knife. Now, I think when a lot of people heard this story, number one, they thought Perez Hilton must be related to Paris Hilton. That is not the case. It's a pseudonym that he goes by, and he's 48 years old. This is not to downplay it, but I think sometimes people think, these suicidal moves are done almost exclusively by the really young, especially on social media. 48 years old.
Yes, so tragic. And what we know about individuals that are contemplating suicide is that oftentimes they have given clues, if you will. That is why our Zero Suicide Summit in St. John's is so important, because people need to know what those clues are, what to look for if they know of someone that is struggling, that may be thinking about taking their own life. Oftentimes, suicide goes hand in hand with alcohol or other drugs, lowers the impulsivity, and is often connected, as well as untreated mental illness, whether that be clinical depression, bipolar disorder, PTSD. So a lot of factors contribute, and we want the public to know what those signs and symptoms are so we can save lives.
A lot of times what we see on social media, the dinners that people post on social media, the fabulous vacations and clothing and outfits and parties, that's not real life.
Exactly. And so many people look at those photos and compare themselves and their lives to those photos, and oftentimes makes them even more depressed. I don't have that life. I don't have friends to invite to a dinner party. I don't have money to host a dinner party. And so it can really spiral downward and cause mental health effects.
So one of the things that we tell people, and we do want to tell our listeners now, if you have any issues or have any suicidal ideation or just need to talk with somebody, there are some resources available. You can call 988, which is a new number, relatively new in the past couple of years, for the suicide prevention hotline, if you will. But also LSF Health makes themselves available to members of the public for free.
Absolutely.
And anonymously?
Yes, indeed. You can call our Access to Care line any time, day or night, 24/7. It is manned by our clinical team, and they will listen to what is going on with you and then connect you to community resources to get that help and support that you need.
So anyone who is in our listening area should pay note, because then you can definitely call that number for free, even if you just need to speak with someone for just a few minutes.
Yes, and that number is 1-877-229-9098.
The data shows that contacts are still growing year over year for those who are reaching out to these types of hotlines. Does that reflect the fact that more people are actually in crisis, or just that maybe we're more willing to talk about things?
I think it's a combination of both. I think that we have done a lot of media awareness, and thank you to WOKV for being a great partner, to really try to destigmatize the fact that reaching out for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. So let's get rid of all those stereotypes. And I think that people are more apt to then reach out because awareness has been raised, resources have been available. Certainly at LSF Health Systems, we are the safety net system in the system of care, and we have providers in our 23 counties that serve individuals that have no other means of paying. They have no insurance, they live in poverty, but they need help.
Dr. Cauffield, you have been in the space for a long time despite your youth.
Yes, I have.
What do some of the trends tell us about the mental health infrastructure in the U.S. and the needs of that infrastructure? Where are we falling short?
Well, we definitely continue to be in a mental health crisis, a national mental health crisis. We have not enough therapists and behavioral health clinicians to serve the population that are struggling. So that's a real challenge for all of us, not only in the state of Florida, but nationally. And we, especially in our rural communities, have a dearth of providers that live there, that work there. So that is why it is so important to let people know that there's telehealth options, especially for those living in rural communities.
And by telehealth, you do not mean AI.
Correct. Telehealth involves a real-life clinician that is working with you on your phone, on your computer, having sessions with you. It removes any barriers of transportation that you might have, any barriers of childcare, et cetera, that would prevent you from normally going to see a therapist. You can sit in the comfort of your own home, in your living room, and have a therapy session with a trained clinician.
In emergency management situations and in the movies and on TV, we also hear things about a person's will to live being so important. But that also has mental health implications as well. And I have heard it said that the will to live sometimes exists alongside the will to die. What does that mean?
Yes, that's very, very true. A lot of people don't realize that. So the individual typically that is contemplating suicide is almost in a tug of war. They have made a plan. They want to end their suffering. However, they're torn because there is something that is preventing them from following through. And as clinicians, we want to grab a hold of what that is, whether it be leaving behind children, whether it's a parent, whatever is a tug and an interest, if you will, to that person. We want to capitalize on that and work with them to continue wanting to live.
My guest is Dr. Christine Cauffield. She is the CEO of LSF Health Systems. Dr. Cauffield, does everyone at one time or another think about dying?
You know, the statistics show that it is more frequent than you might guess. A lot of people have suicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts. However, they don't have a plan or a means to follow through with that thought. So we have people in that category that are going through a rough patch and feel like, you know, it would be better off if they weren't here, or they just want the pain to end. But we must remind individuals that suicide is a temporary fix. It is not a solution to problem solving. And when you do complete suicide, that's a permanent consequence. So we want to help individuals strive to grab a hold of what might be tugging at their heartstrings to remain. We want to ask them how they've survived thus far, what keeps them here thus far, and then work with that strength so that they don't follow through.
So if someone who is listening has said, you know, oh my goodness, at some point I've said, oh, I just wish I didn't have to be here anymore. Is that normal versus someone who says, you know, I wish I didn't have to be here anymore, and here's how I'm going to do that?
Right. So suicidal ideation certainly is nothing to take lightly, and we must always take those thoughts seriously. But having a plan bumps up that risk factor tremendously. So I'll tell you, it's kind of a wake-up call. If you are having those feelings, life would be better off without me. I just don't think I can do it anymore. That's the time to seek help, because there could be a chemical imbalance in the brain. You know, depression is a brain disease. Bipolar is a brain disease. Addiction is a brain disease. And we have medications now that can recalibrate and get us back on track. That plus therapy is the best practice for moving through a very difficult and challenging time in your life. And you can make it. You can get through it. But we really encourage people to reach out for help and support. It's available.
And I don't want to oversimplify things, but sometimes, not to say that people just need a nap, but maybe people just need a wellness check-in. We're learning more and more every day about the importance of mental hygiene, physical hygiene, gut health, and things like that, and how they impact our mental health. Is our overall physical health a factor in deciding our mental health?
Absolutely. They are so integrated. They're so intertwined. You can no longer silo treating physical health care needs with mental health care needs, because if you're not feeling well physically, that's going to certainly not increase your mood, and it's going to cause some issues for you, feeling depressed and hopeless, and vice versa. If you're not feeling well mentally, that's going to then put you at higher risk for colds, flus, your immune system drops, and other diseases such as heart disease and even cancer.
Dr. Cauffield, one of the things that is now being studied and talked about a lot more is the fact that particularly people who've experienced some kind of trauma in life have more autoimmune diseases, more mental health issues long term.
Yes,
would you agree with all that?
Absolutely. The research certainly supports that. And the more traumatic events that you've experienced, particularly in childhood, the greater your risk are for having some kind of mental health challenge, addiction. A lot of people self-medicate with drugs and alcohol because the pain is so great. The trauma is so fresh. Trauma literature also states that actually trauma is encoded on a cellular level in our bodies. So we carry that trauma with us. It's so important to get help to work through those traumatic events. And we have so many wonderful trauma-informed care therapists in Jacksonville and the surrounding areas to be able to work with you, to work through those traumatic events. They don't have to be a permanent fixture in your body, in your soul. There are strategies to work through these traumas, and help and health is on its way.
It's so fascinating to me, and I guess also sad, to realize that trauma can travel generationally through our cells, which is a relatively new discovery, but you may have trauma about something that you don't even remember having. And this is particularly true in the case of women, because if your grandmother experienced trauma, then the eggs she was carrying were those of your mother, and your mother's eggs experienced that trauma, and those eggs then became you. And you have experienced that trauma. So you may have feelings of things about which you really don't even know the origins of. And that's so important to physiologically, mentally seeking help whenever you feel something, because you just don't know where this, in all cases, came from.
Exactly. And also, it's a fascinating body of literature, what you're describing. It's called epigenetics. And for those of you that have an interest, I invite you to do more research. It is really compelling. It's just amazing. That's intergenerational, as a matter of fact, on how we carry our ancestors' trauma. Also, a thing about trauma that a lot of people don't realize is it can actually alter the structures in your brain. So again, it's so very important to get some help, work through these traumatic events, these traumatic issues that you're carrying around, so that you can become healthy and move forward in a more positive way.
It is interesting, especially because we want people to feel empowered, that sometimes the thing that things that you're feeling are not necessarily a direct result of something that you have personally experienced. And I think that's difficult for people to wrap their heads around sometimes.
Yes, it is. But again, this new body of literature, epigenetics, is fascinating. And that's why you see a lot of people having intergenerational issues and not really knowing what the origin is. And so it's quite compelling and even more of a reason to seek support and help if you're struggling with those issues.
And one of the reasons why I love having you on is because you also practice this. You're not just a beautiful talking head. You practice this. You talk with people on a day-to-day basis. What is life-focused prevention?
Life-focused prevention is, again, a form of intervention that we utilize when we are working with individuals that are having suicidal thoughts, that are contemplating taking their own lives. And again, it's focused on finding out what strengths they've had to make it thus far, and finding out what their pulls are, what is important to them in their lives, what are their life goals up until this point, and then working with that information to help them see that they do have some will to live, and let's focus on that will, and let's help them get through this very rough patch that they're going through that is temporary, and really encouraging them with hope that they can make it through, focus on how they've gotten through past very difficult issues, and then working with them to grab a hold of that strength and keep moving forward.
And we don't have time to talk about it today, but the next time you're on, I want to talk about specifically what happens when someone calls 988. But Dr. Christine Cauffield is the CEO of LSF Health Systems, and you have the Zero Suicide Summit coming up in St. Johns County, specifically in St. Augustine next week.
Yes, we're so very excited. We have a phenomenal keynote speaker. His name is Sergeant Kevin Briggs, and he's known as the guardian of the Golden Gate Bridge. And in his 22 years of patrolling that bridge, he successfully was able to talk down over 200 people from the ledge. And his story is riveting, and we hope everybody will come out and attend.
It's worth it to see him speak. He is a dynamic guest speaker.
Indeed.
For certain. How do people get tickets?
Well, you can go on to our website, zerosuicidecommunities.org, and there you can have a drop-down menu that has our information on Zero Suicide St. John's Summit. It's going to be held August 12th from 8 until 4, and we're hosting it at the Embassy Suites in St. Augustine Beach.
And we'll have a link to all of this on our website in the blog post later on this afternoon that accompanies the audio and video from today's interview. Again, it is next Wednesday at the Embassy Suites from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Tickets available online. Dr. Christine Cauffield, thank you so much for being my guest.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you to you and WOKV for raising awareness on this very important topic.